What is up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, here to educate you on health, fitness, and social well-being. And in this video, I'm going to be doing my personal IPF Worlds recap, specifically going over the performances of my 8 clients who compete at IPF Worlds, as well as 2 US lifters who I don't directly coach, but was either directly handling or assisting in handling. And the 2 reasons why I want to make this video, first, the obvious reasons, I think it's going to be informative. I think it's going to be very good for those of you, whether you're a coach, game day handler, a lifter where you self-coach, make your own calls, just taking y'all through, the mentality of what I did and why, the good, the bad, everything in between, just give you guys some more insight and hopefully for you to be able to take something from this that can help you be better long-term with your own endeavors on the platform, right? Because I think it's just, there's unique insight that we can gain when we're talking about being at the highest level of our sport, which is the IPF world level, right? So that's the first reason. And the second reason, and arguably more important, at least in my opinion, is in response to certain performances or certain searches in IPF Worlds, I see 2 extreme camps in terms of how people respond. The first camp is basically those who are actually the ones there, right? The lifters who are competing at Worlds or the lifters who are coaching or handling at Worlds, right? And it's this extreme response of not being able to take accountability. And what I mean by that is you make a call that wasn't the right call, or you don't execute something to standard. I'm not talking about something where you clearly execute to standard and the judges are just on whatever nonsense they're on, because we do know objectively that happens. But a squat was high and you know it's high, or you make a call that you shouldn't have made, whatever it may be. And just due to, I think, of course, embarrassment, but then just pride and ego, instead of just acknowledging that, hey, you know what, I could have made a better call here, it's always just cope. And it's not a cope if you're bringing up context of something that the viewers don't see. I think it's important to bring that context up, as I'm going to do here in this video, so that people can have better understanding and insight. But at the same time, that context doesn't necessarily negate or justify a bad call made or not executing to the standard that you should, right? And I feel like that's not beneficial to do. I feel like people have to understand that we can continue to grow and get better at all levels of the sport, even at the world level. And I think you don't do yourself a favor or do the people who watch you a favor by just making a long laundry list of excuses as to why something didn't go down the way you want, especially when a lot of these factors are things that every other lifter had to deal with on the day. So I don't like that extreme, and I want to be able to show that even me, who's coaching at this level, that I can admit that, hey, I should have done this better. I should have called this better, right? So I think that's how we grow and get better. But then on the opposite end, you have this other extreme camp, which in my mind is a little bit more annoying, is the camp of people who are very hypercritical, where they go so far as, they bash the lifters if they don't perform to the expectations that they, put on the lifter, or they bash the coaches and bash the calls made in a very hypercritical way. Not just saying like, oh, I thought that was a bad call, but going so far as to attack, the character and the intelligence of the lifters, the coaches. And quite frankly, the vast majority of people in this camp are individuals who are never going to be at this level. You are either a lifter where you're never going to compete on the world stage, or you're a coach where you're never going to coach on the world stage. So to be that hypercritical is unnecessary. And I think it just is a projection more than anything else, right? So my hope is to kind of be somewhere in the middle and bring a balance between these extremes with this video. And the reason why I say that, I think the vast majority of people who are hypercritical to that degree, where they're almost attacking the character, are people who never be at that level, is because most people who have competed or coached at this level show a little bit more grace. I think Matt Gary's a great example. I love the way Matt carries himself in the sense of he will objectively admit or call out if he thinks someone made a bad call. Like, hey, that wasn't a good call. It's not the call I would make. But he does it with grace and with tact and respect, and with acknowledging if he doesn't have the full context as to why something was done, or sometimes even be like, hey, I understand why they made this call because of this circumstance. It's not the call I would have made, but I understand why they did it. And I think that most of us who do coach or lift at the world level show each other grace because we understand the pressure that comes with it, right? Not as an excuse. A bad call is still a bad call, but I think that's the balance that people should seek to have. And I'm going to try to do that here in this video. So first and foremost, this is going to be a longer video. Obviously, some recaps of certain lifters will be shorter than others based upon how much there is to go over, based upon the details of that particular session. I'm going to try to have everything timestamped in the description box below, so if you want to click to a specific lifter, you can just click on that and then go from there. But yeah, let's just get right into it. So starting off with, day one, and my lifter Leanne Lee in the 47 kg weight class. So coming into this weight class, we already knew that if the day played out the way we expected, that Turbo Tiff was going to get first, right? Like, she would have to mess up, miss 1 or 2 lifts, and we would have to have a perfect day and be very much on to probably overtake her, just based upon how well she's been doing in training and her past couple performances. She looked very sharp, very on. We already knew that. So our main goal was to try to come in, secure silver, and try to hit high enough over the 95% of the world record total in order to try to get Leanne her Sheffield spot. And we knew that our main competition for that was going to be Team Canada in the form of, I'm going to make sure I'm saying her name right, of Amelie. Amelie, I believe is how you pronounce it. I want to say Emily, but I know it's like Amelie, I believe is how you pronounce it. And I feel bad because I literally reached out to her to ask how to say her name correctly. But hopefully I'm saying correctly. So Amelie for Team France, we knew that she would be our main competition and that despite us being higher with nominated totals, we knew she wasn't truly that far behind, especially with the 450 training total that she put up for this World's Prep. So as far as a little bit of background and just context, the first thing to know, if you guys aren't aware of, is that Leanne, the block before the final block Billions of Worlds, was dealing with a back injury. And due to this, we had to cut down quite a bit of workload on the squat, but more specifically the deadlift. We still managed at the end of that block for her to come in and squat 150 kg in training, which is huge for her because she's typically good for 2.5 to 5 kg more on the platform than whatever she hits in training. So matching her best from nationals in training was huge with a 150 squat. And we did hit a 95 kg bench PR. But the deadlift, the heaviest deadlift we got to pull was around 180 kg, just due to how detrained she felt with how much we had to pull back in order to make sure we could clear this injury out with the back. Because the mentality was, instead of trying to force things and force this workload in, pull back enough, let the back heal up, and then just build back up going into Worlds. And that's what we did. So there's that context. And the other thing is that Leanne weighed in lighter than what she typically does. I believe she weighed in exactly at 45.7. Typically, Leanne is weighing in like, in 46 point whatever it may be, at least 46 kg. But I think just due to the travel, as well as the fact that even though she was eating quite a bit, eating into the meat, that the food in Lithuania just it's not as calorically dense. So even if you're eating all this food, it's really hard to get the same total amount of calories in and to keep the weight up right where you want it to be. So, we keep that in mind. Obviously, that's a factor that we have to just account for even more so. Like I said, she was doing really well with eating, but the weight was down. So that's a little bit of context going into it. So starting off with the squats, actually, before we get to the squats, I got to talk about the fact that, of all reviews I'm going to do in this video, this one is probably going to be the one where I am criticizing myself the most. Just because it hits differently, not just because of how the day played out, but so Leanne and I have been working together since July 2022. She competed at Mega Nationals, I believe it was in June, and then we started a month or two after that. And every meet we've done together since then, she has gone 8 for 9 or 9 for 9, except for her last USAPL meet where she went 7 for 9 because she got called for her third squat on depth. That was the only meet we had together where we didn't go 8 for 9 or 9 for 9 until this IPF Worlds, right? So going into it, starting off with squats, we hit her opening squat of 132.5 kilos. And it was a smoke show. Very fast, very easy move, very, very well. But she got called for depth. Now, it's important to understand that the way it kind of works as far as the U.S. coaching team, right, is that you have us personal coaches who are seen as the official title nomination is the assistant coach. Then we have, of course, the head coach. And then there's official coach and their head coach that are back there. So I was back there with 2 of the official U.S. coaches, right? And we met the day before, unfortunately, that I'm going to try not to get too critical of the way that Team U.S. did things this year compared to how it was when we had Matt Gary. But met the day before, went over the game plan, and talked through everything in terms of the different circumstances, what the goals were, right? And one thing that we all agreed to was that no matter what, if we get called on an opener, but it's just a technical call, we go up for the second because we knew we would need to do that to be in the battle. If you get called on the second for something technical, you can retake on the third, but we need to be at least in the second attempt range across all 3 lifts to be where we need to be. That's what we discussed. So based upon how our 132.5 moved, we decided to still go up for the second. We had option 2A or 2B. Based upon how easy the opener was, she felt confident we could still go to 2A and just sink it more, and she did. So she hit 145 kilos, which is 5 kg under her comp best on the squat for a second attempt, and it moved well. It was smooth. Keeping in mind that one big thing that was different for Leanne was the fact that she was in the SBD sleeve. She was in the SBD kit compared to being in the Inzers for nationals. So we understood that we had to get used to gauging things like the depth, the drive through, the speed, everything like that. But based upon the speed and smoothness and no loss of position, we felt very confident that she would be good for 5 more kg. And then the jump was going to be either 2.5 or 5 just to be safe. Our original range was 150 to 155, but after having to dunk the second more, we knew that would take a little bit off. So we made it, okay, 147 to 150 is going to be the move. Leanne felt confident for 150. I felt confident for 150, and the coach that was back there with us also felt confident for 150. We felt like that was going to be the move, and unfortunately, just wasn't quite there. Right, just wasn't there from a strength perspective. Couldn't quite grind through it. We think a big part of that has to do with one, just the body weight being lower, right, as well as just getting used to the sausage and being able to maintain position and drive through with that, which we will obviously have more time to do post Worlds now going forward, right? But not the start we wanted on squats, but still not the worst spot to be in. I was very happy that we still went up to 145 for our second because, Tiff was obviously way ahead on squats by this point. But Amelie, she, even though she squatted well, squatted a little bit under where we thought she might be based upon her training. So we're still in a pretty decent spot. Bench is where things got rough. Bench was a bloodbath just for that entire class, and really for the entire week. Bench was a bloodbath, especially though for like the lighter weight females and lighter men too. And really every class had issues with the bench calls and bench depth and the heaving, all the nonsense. I'm not gonna get into it. We all know that the bench rules are ridiculous right now, but it was a bloodbath. So for Leanne, she hit 87.5 kg, right? For her bench opener, smoked it, moved very, very well, and we got 2 whites. What was frustrating about this was 2 things. One, the lift got overturned, but the thing is, the 1 red she got supposedly was for her glutes on the opener, right? Even that's what we were told. Even though we saw no glute movement, that's what it was. That's what it was for, right? But when the judges reviewed it, they didn't take the lift away because of her glutes. They took it away because of elbow depth, which to me is ridiculous in the sense of you should only be able to evaluate the lift and choose if it's good or bad based upon what it got a red for, right? So they took it away for elbow depth. Now at this point, before they took it away, we had already put in 92.5 for her second attempt for the 5 kilo jump, right? Now what was frustrating for me was we had put 92.5 in, so we're going, me and Leanne are talking, discussing some cues and stuff like that, and then we see that it's overturned, right? So it's overturned, and before I can even express or say anything, we see that the official U.S. coach already dropped her back down to retake it for the opener. Now, the reason why this was frustrating was 2 things. 1, there was no communication about it, and 2, we had already agreed the day before that no matter what, you still go up for the second. So that put us in a really rough position. Now, mind you, Team Canada at this point, they missed their opener because of elbow depth, and they also missed their second because of elbow depth. So it was kind of an interesting scenario as far as that. But the bottom line is having that 92.5 for the second would have been really, really good for us to just be in a better spot overall. With that being said, Leanne retook the 87.5 for her second attempt, got it clean, 3 white lights, no issues. Now this is where I made a mistake because based upon how the 87.5 moved and the jumps we've made in training, I now have a decision to make. Okay, do we just jump 5 kg to the original second attempt for the third, 92.5? Or do I have her jump 7.5 to 95 kg? Because she said she felt really good. She felt strong for it. I'm looking at the fact of where Amelie is at currently. I'm looking at the fact that I'm trying to gain more kilos. And here's where my headspace is at, right? And this isn't to justify, because I'll explain why this is the wrong move regard. My headspace is the fact that, okay, we haven't pulled more than 180 in 8 weeks. I know that we put in a fake opener for Leanne at this point of 180, but our actual plan was to open 187.5. So we knew we had to open up with at least that to make the jumps that we need to get her deadlift where it needs to be. But my mentality is because even though her back's been good for the block going into Worlds and based upon how things are trending, there should be no reason we have any issues with that opener. I am not sure where the top end of the deadlift is necessarily going to be. And due to that, I'm trying to think, okay, the more kilos I can save and not have to worry about pushing on the deadlift, the better spot will be in, since no matter what, she's going to have the last deadlift anyway. So that was my mentality. But the problem is I was looking too far ahead. I was thinking too far ahead of, okay, this might happen on deadlift, so I need to make a call on bench based upon that, which is just not the right thing to do. You have to work with what's right in front of you, and what was right in front of me was that we had to retake the opener on the second, right? So the smart thing to do is just jump to 2A for the third, which would have been 92.5 kg to 5 kg total. I did not do that. Leanne felt confident that she'd be good for 95 kg, and I decided, like, okay, let's go for it. Let's get these extra kilos, and it just wasn't there. And I think it really was a matter of if she would have been because she was kind of focusing a lot more on like make sure her glutes were secure, make sure elbow depth was good. She was focusing on all these different things. I think she couldn't put full focus in just pressing the way she needed to. But I also feel like just the jump from 87 to 95 was just too much. Even though she's made that type of jump in training before, not to her highest in bench press, right? She's made like a 7.5 jump to 90 and even 92.5 before, but not to 95. So that was on me, because I can sit here all day and be like, well, the circumstances of like the bad calls and, oh, the other coach dropped her second down without telling, but it doesn't matter, because in the moment when it was time to make that final call, I should have made the call 92.5, because in hindsight, had she hit 92.5, right, and the rest of the day would have played out as it did, then she would have won on body weight and gotten second place, and in getting second place would have secured her Sheffield spot based on how the rest of the week played out in terms of where the other women landed relative to the percentage of the world record total. So I take full responsibility for that, because even if my lifter says, hey, I feel confident for this, even if in my mind I'm thinking like, okay, I don't want to risk things going wrong on the deadlift, I can't make a decision in the now based upon what might happen on deadlift. I need to make the best decision right then and there. And since my usual mentality is the only reason that I'm loading like, a number is if I think they're good for maybe like 2.5 more than that, especially on like a squat or a bench. Well, the answer shouldn't have been like, do I think she's good for 95? It should have been like, well, do I think she could hit like, based off how this 87.5 moved, I think she would jump 10 to 97.5? And the answer, of course, is no. So that if I thought 95 is what she would be good for all out right in that moment, I should have just done the 5 kg jump to 92.5, point blank period. It was an awful call, and it cost my lifter her Sheffield spot. Potentially in the moment, but long term, it ended up costing her the Sheffield spot, right? So that was just the wrong call, and she didn't get it, right? Now, going to deadlifts, it's just a matter of like, okay, we got to just play the game and try to just match what Team Canada does and try to win on body weight. That's the biggest goal, right? So we bumped her her opener from 180 to the true opener 187.5, and she smoked it. It moved so well, so fast. But I think because she almost wasn't expecting it to move as well as it did, since once again the heaviest we touched in like the 8 weeks was like 180. I think it surprised her, so she lost a little bit of balance at the top, and that's why she got called on her opener. But it still moved well, and she still felt confident. So we went up to 195 kg for a second pull, and it moved beautifully. Like very good patience, strong drive off the floor. She says she could feel. She did say that she could feel her pelvis tucking a little bit more, but by that point, we just put in what we needed to hit in order to try to set ourselves up. As well as possible, which ended up being 200 kg, because that would have allowed her to tie the total with Amelie, but to win on body weight, right? And 200 was just too much for the day. And it was just a 5 kg jump from 195 200, just too much on the day. Especially with the expenditure that was already done on her back with the squat, right? Now, thankfully, she was able to walk away from this healthily, no issues. And despite going 3 for 9, still landed on the podium and still totaled, the exact total was 427.5, which is crazy to think about on a 3 for 9 day. And granted, that 3 for 9 day is with technical calls on the opener, squat and bench, and then the mishap on the opener deadlift. But regardless, still 3 for 9 day on paper. And that is the worst performance I've had as far as attempts made handling someone in years. I want to say like in the past 2, almost 3 years, every time I directly handled someone, I've had a goal of trying to make sure I don't ever go below 7 for 9, right? And obviously that happened as far as Leanne. But the thing is, we know what to work on. We know that one is just getting more time, her being used to, the SBD sleeves and the SBD belt. We also know that a big thing for her is, despite how hectic her lifestyle is, especially in regards to things like, her being a nurse and the eating schedule and things like that, she knows there's another level she can lock into as a lifter. As far as I know I can eat more. I can be more on top of my eating. Even though having the body weight advantage is cool, there's no reason we shouldn't be walking around 46, 47 more consistently versus 2 kilos under, right? It's just not doing anything for us at that point. She's going to be pushing her accessories that much harder. Just getting her more jacked, more muscular, being more on top of those variables, even though she's doing what she needs to do, being more intense with everything, is going to be huge for her. And then for me, it's just a fact of just not making these emotional calls, which was very uncharacteristic of me. I can say that it's very uncharacteristic of me to do something like that. But I think just in that moment, like I said, being too concerned of the what ifs instead of focusing on what's right in front of you, right? And that's what I took from it, and what I, tried to make sure I did a much better job of throughout the rest of the week, right? So that's how things shaped up with Leanne. Still very proud of her, and she was very happy with the day. Just for her, it's her first time being at Open Worlds. We know we can get back there. We know what has to be done to get back there. We know that going into Nationals next year, especially with Heather, if she comes back, we know that it's going to be a battle and that we have to be on our A game. So I think the next time she's on the platform, you guys are going to see a whole different Leanne, and I'm very, very excited for her as far as that. So that was day 1 for me on the Saturday. Day 2 was on Sunday with my client, Ashton Nikolai. Now, because of how rough things started with day 1, my mentality wasn't to simply I got to make up for it and being anxious, but more so hey, learn from what just happened, make the smart calls, don't get too greedy, don't get too aggressive. Just do what you need to do in regards to making the right calls, right? So going into it with Ashton, kind of similar, right? Where we already knew that it would be very, very tough to come in and get first. Not even tough. We pretty much viewed it as impossible, just because the type of day that Shell would have to have in order for us to be able to come in there and beat him. We knew that Shell was going to be the runaway favorite for first. So our goal, first and foremost, was just to get on the podium. We came in nominated fourth, but we felt very confident we could get on the podium, hitting at least third. If the potential for second was there, then we would go for that, right? But more importantly, just getting on the podium is what Austin wanted, and to try to come in and also PR his total. And based off where everything was at in training, we felt we would be very, very locked in for that. So starting off with the squat, we opened up with 235 kilos, and it moved well. Austin could already tell from his warm-ups that he was on. I could already tell he was on, and everything was great to standard. I mean, 3 white lights on his opener. His depth on his last warm-up was perfect. Everything was great, right? So we went to the planned second attempt at 257.5, and it also moved very, very well. 3 white lights, like just moving perfectly. Everything's great, right? So our range was pretty much like 272.5 to about, I want to say, let me just pull it up real quick for you guys so that I'm not misquoting what the actual range was. Yeah, our range for squat was going to be 272.5 to 278 because we thought the record could potentially be there. Based upon how his second attempt moved, we felt the strength for 276 was there. But once again, it's like, okay, let's not make the same mistake. We think the strength for 276 is there, but that'd probably be what it is all out. So let's just be smart and do 272.5 instead. That would still be the junior squat record, and would just put us in a very good spot going into bench, considering where everybody else was at in squat in terms of either missing thirds or not looking as strong as we expect them to be. So we went with 272.5, and this is the call out of everyone that I handled that was the most like gut wrenching in terms of like just the judging of it. So he hits 272.5, squats it, pretty much exact same depth, same standard as the opener and second, right? If you can find any difference, I'd say it's very little. And he got it, fought through it, and it was the perfect number. It was the right call. Like any more, and it would have been too much, which is why I go with the mentality of, okay, if I think it's good for this all out, if he groups it perfect, let's go a little bit less than that. So we did it, and we see 2 reds. And we couldn't believe it. So we go to the jury, and the jury discussed it for a little bit. Because in my mind, I'm thinking the jury's definitely gonna overturn this. Because in my mind, because I'm thinking the 2 reds were both for depth. Because from where I was, I couldn't see if it was like blue card, yellow card from the position I was in, right? So I go over there, and I'm thinking, and my first was like, exact same depth as the second, like 3 whites for the second is exact same depth. The jury tells me that they agree that the third squat was depth. They agree it was to depth. But that was only what 1 red was for. The other red apparently is because when Austin locked out, they claimed that he had like the slight forward lean of his torso, which was perceived as jumping the rack command. Now this doesn't make sense to me for a couple of reasons. One, if that's the case, I'll just use, for example, I'll have, as I'm showing you everything, I'm having it on screen. I'll use Tiffany's Chapon, I'll use her third squat as an example. When she locks out her third squat, you can see there's a little bit of her torso leaning forward, but her legs are locked, the feet aren't moving, the bar is still, her body's fully erect, everything's all good. So that was 3 whites for her third squat. Well, it's the same thing with Austin. You don't see him stepping forward, his legs are locked, the bar is still, there's no excessive torso movement or anything like that. Maybe just a subtle, as he's locking out, see the torso come a little bit, but he's completely locked out. And then he does not, as far as jumping the rack command, he didn't rack the weight until they said rack, and they brought him into it. So even though the jury did agree, and because it was a 5-person jury, it doesn't have to be unanimous, it just has to be 3 out of 5. But I guess for them, they all agreed that the squat was depth, no issues there. But they also agreed with the call as far as, but the torso did lean forward. So they didn't overturn it, unfortunately. And I mean, just straight up, I thought that was a nonsense call. I just don't see it, right? And of course, I am biased towards my lifter. But if I just look at how he squatted, and I compare it to other people's squats, in the same session before that pass, it just doesn't make sense. And also in the official rule book, there's just nothing that even says that, if there's a slight forward lean of the torso, there's nothing that says that. You have to be completely locked out, can't step forward or back, bar has to be still, have to be completely erect, and as far as being upright, and that was all done to standard. So that was really unfortunate because that took a huge chunk off of our total. And I think even though Austin was still in a very good headspace overall, it also kind of just mentally deflates you a little bit, which then leads into bench press. So with bench press, we opened up with 137.5. He smoked it. It moved well. So we made a typical jump. Typically, if we open around 137, we're always going to jump to 142 or 145 based upon how things are moving. So we did our typical jump to 145 kilos. Where from there, we're going to try to finish anywhere between, 147 and 152.5. On his second attempt, he presses off the chest really strong, but one of his wrists rolls on him really aggressively. So then he loses the bar positions, trying to grind through it, and just couldn't quite finish it out. So we just take it again for the third and remind him, like, hey, man, keep that wrist in position, keep that wrist extended, and push up and back immediately off the chest. And he did so, but just from grinding so as much as he did on the second, it just wasn't there, which was unfortunate because that also put us in a rough spot as far as, missing the third squat and then only getting our opening bench, right? Now, the difference between like Leanne and Austin at this point is that at this point, it's not me being mad at the calls. The call for the squat was the right call. The judges just weren't in our favor that day, right? And then with bench, we made our usual calls that we did. And after missing the second, the only logical thing was to just retake it. He just wasn't quite there. But after talking to him more about it afterwards, we do think that there was a little bit of deflation of like the energy and the focus after what happened with that third squat. So I do believe that played a role with it. Mind you, you got to roll with that. That's the part where we have to say, hey, you got to push through it and just do the best you can regardless, and like put the squat out of your mind, which to Austin's credit, I think he did the best he could. But there's certain things that subconsciously may be playing a role with things, right? So at this point, going into it, we're looking at it, and we already know it's going to be very tough to get onto the podium unless deadlift just goes perfectly. We feel pretty confident we're locked in for fourth place, but we would have to work pretty well to get into third place position. What made it more frustrating was realizing that if we had gotten our third squat and even our second bench or the retake of on the third, we could have been in a spot for battling out for second with Joe Jordan, just because Joe didn't show up quite as strong as what maybe we were expecting either. But with deadlifts, we opened up with 270 kg, moved the way we expected it to, went to our planned second of 295 kg, and by that point, the goal was just to be like, okay, we're just going to wait and see what we need to hit. Based upon what Kyoto does. At this point, Joe Jordan was pretty far ahead for us to try to go for second. We're just going to wait and see what Kyoto did, how his third pull goes, whether he got or didn't get it, and then just try to match him total-wise and win on body weight. So we end up having to load 310 kg, and unfortunately just was not there on the day strength-wise, right? So we ended up finishing with a 690 kg total and in fourth place. But once again, what's frustrating is, forget the bench. If you just give Austin that squat, that brings his total up by 15 kg to 705, which is what Kyoto hit. He would have tied Kyoto on total, but bumped him due to body weight and been on the podium. So that one was frustrating, just because it is, out of everything that happened for my clients, that's the one that I felt the most like just robbed. Like it's one thing if you do the lift to what you think is a good standard, but when you hit the lift to the standard, to the rules, you try to be as undeniable as possible, you do what you're supposed to do, and then you get called on something that isn't even really like a rule in terms of like the actual wording of the rule, or the way they're reading, perceiving the rule is like not applicable to what's going on with your client. It's very frustrating. But I'm proud of Austin, and I'm proud of his mentality, because he straight up told me, he's like, man, it's been my dream just to be here at Open Worlds. I've gone to Junior Worlds, I've won Junior Worlds, but to be here at Open Worlds, which is what I wanted to do when I first started powerlifting, he's like, I could have bombed out and I would have still been happy. And it's crazy because I know he means it. But I'm excited because I also know he's on a different level of being locked in. Austin and I have been working together for a little bit over a year now at this point, and he's been doing everything that I need him to do. But I think for him, he's just realizing that there was still like a different hunger he had, right, before working together. With coming back to me, his first goal was just to fall in love with the sport again. He's found that, but now it's going beyond just enjoying it to like, no, I want to be the best I can truly be. And I think that going through what we went through here is going to unlock that for him. So honestly, even though, we're not happy with how things came about, still happy with, be able to place top 5 given those circumstances. So that's how things went. As far as Austin, and it was still a good showing. It was a good battle between like for second through fourth essentially, because first was pretty locked in by Shell. But all in all, as far as what we've learned with Austin, we know we're doing prep wise is working. We know that we're doing strength wise is working. We are going to definitely allow him to sit a little bit heavier in his off season. Because our cuts go really well and are really easy, and we know just putting a little bit more mass on him is going to be good. And we know the big thing for us is we have to bring that bench up. Squat's in a great spot. We know deadlift strength's going crazy, but we have to be able to bring that bench up so that way we have an even bigger advantage with typically being one of the last people to pull, right? But just bring up that subtotal in the form of the bench. So that's what we're doing as far as Austin. So that was Sunday. I did not have anyone going on Monday. Really enjoyed watching the 57 kg women and then watching Austin Perkins in the 74s. So the next client that I had going was Ade Omisakin on Tuesday. Now, the way it works, right, due to the rules with both Powerlifting America as well as GB, is that if you were there as a nominated coach for Team USA, then you are not allowed to directly handle someone on a different team. So I couldn't directly handle for someone Team GB. And if Powerlifting America didn't have that rule, that's also Team GB's rule as well. Thankfully, we had a really good system because Matt Geary, of course, is the head coach for GB, and he has all the coaches on GB following the same system as far as like, us sending them our lifters training footage to them and stuff like that. And we were working with Alex Pearson Jones, aka Peach. We already had a game plan set on a call well before we got to Lithuania. We got to meet again while we were in Lithuania a couple days before Ade competed and just talk over all the different scenarios. And we had a really good system in terms of communication as far as like, okay, Ade's going to take an attempt. Peach is going to look to me. I'm going to throw up a hand signal for like option, 3A or 2A, whatever it may be. So he has my input, and then they're going to go back, talk, and put in the number that makes most sense based upon what we've all talked about. And the cool thing is, even though I wasn't able to directly handle Ade, just due to the setup in Lithuania, it's really easy. Like, okay, I can just watch Ade's warm-ups from behind this glass door. I can still see how all the warm-ups are moving. So that way I can give input on like cueing and stuff like that if we need to. And then as far as when we're actually doing the actual like competition, like I said, he does an attempt. Peach looks to me. I signal what I think to do. I then can walk to the back, so long as I don't go into the actual warm-up room or go into the actual, like, behind the platform, go out to the back. Ade can walk out, can talk to him, cue him through different things, which you guys will see played a big role in how things went. But starting with the squat. So Ade, and of course, we already knew the main thing coming in was going to be like, okay, our main competition is obviously going to be Joe and endurance. And then, of course, depending on how things shaped up, right? But we felt confident that if we came in and hit our lifts, it was going to come down just to the last deadlift. And our overall goal was pretty much by Joe's last deadlift to put him in a position where he would either have to underestimate what he think we could do and try to just lock in what he thinks secures him the win over Jurens and then expecting us to miss, or having to push himself really hard, overreaching, missing, and then making it even easier for us, right? But we came in, wanting to be strong enough to hit 900 kg or more and just play the game as we needed to. So with Ade for squats, we opened up with 282.5 kg, and it moved incredibly well. It moved very, very fast. We could tell he was on. Even from watching his warm-ups, we could tell it was on. So I signaled for option 2A, which is 305 kg. Peach and Ade agreed, and that's what they put in. But one thing that I noticed, and that I always keep in mind, especially having experienced this with Ashton before, is with the new Alico bar, that it just seems whippier. Now, I don't know if it's the bar itself. I've heard that it's not necessarily the bar, but that the bar is very similar to the old one, but that the collars, that because they're so tight and the way it keeps the weight settled, that it just causes there to be more whip than usual. I've heard different things, but either way, as it stands with this current bar and collar setup, it's just whippier than with the older Alico bar, right? So after his opening squat, I ran to the back, had Ade come out and just told Ade, like, hey, man, I said, you're doing great, but when you unrack, just let that weight settle a bit more. It's whippier. I can see that. So just let the weight settle a little bit more. Then walk out, do your thing and squat, right? So then I go back. He hits his second squat of 305 kg. It moved well, but harder than what we were probably expecting it to be. And I think a big part of that was, even though he did a better job of letting it settle on the unrack, is I could still see, like, when he would squat and brace, when he was walking back and then going down, that it was moving more than what we needed to. So after watching his 305, I signaled for option 3C. Which was, our range was 315 to 320 on squats, so that's 315. So I signaled for like 3C, definitely no more than that, and they ended up putting 312.5, which was perfect because based upon the fact that Joe missed his opening squat and then of course had to go, he went up for a second still, but probably less than what they expected, and then just based upon how Jordan's squat was looking, where things were at, and where we were expecting them to be, we're like, that's more than enough. It's also a nice PR for Ade, right? So after a second squat, I rush back again. I tell Ade, I say, okay, this time, yes, let the weight settle on the unrack. I said, but as you unrack and you're walking, I said, actively squeeze that upper back against the bar. Do not ease up on that. Do not ease up on your grip. Because Ade is somebody who has a little bit more of a relaxed grip on the bar, even though his back is tight. So I said, you got to squeeze the bar tighter, keep the upper back locked in, walk it out. And when they say squat, don't forget to squat immediately. Brace and feel the weight settle and then squat. And he did just down the third, and it went beautifully. Like, perfect grind, got it done, puts in a really great spot going into bench press. So going into bench press, obviously at this point, from openers, we could already tell things were in our favor because Ade opened with 185 kg, moved really, really well. Our options were going to be 200 kg or 197.5 kg. I signaled for 197.5 just because with already being where we were on the squats, no need to get too greedy or aggressive. The 200 kg would pretty much be useful if we were trying to land at like 207 or 210. But at this point in our minds, I think we're thinking 205, 207 is going to be where we need to be because that's what we discussed after squats before they went back for the bench warm-ups is that, hey, this is all we need to land in. We don't need to be thinking about 210 at this point. So 185 moved well, signal for 197.5, that's what they put in. Then at this point, Duran's 185 is very, very hard. I think it was 185 he opened up with. It's something around there. But his opener was very, very hard. And that was just due to the injury that he gained after his third squat. And then Joe, as you guys probably know by now, if you watch the White Light Media recap, he opened with 207.5, and that was very hard. That was like an all-out upper limit lift just due to the pec strain that he was dealing with. So at this point, we're in a good spot so long as we just make our lifts. So Ade hit 197.5 for a second, and it moved very, very well. Based on how it moved, and based upon what I just know for sure he had, I'm thinking 202.5. But even when I signal for that, me knowing Ade, I'm like, Ade's probably still going to want 205, so we'll see what they end up deciding to do. So I'm thinking 202.5 is just safe. Like, there's no way he misses it. Strength for 205 is there. He would just have to groove it perfectly. So I see they put in 205, so I go back there, and I was like, yep, I got it. I meant it's what I want. I'm really good for it. And P's like, yeah, he says he wants it. He thinks he's good for it. So the only thing I tell Ade is, okay, I say, you're good, but remember, because one thing I noticed on his second attempt, I said you pushed up and then back. You can't do that. You have to push up and back at the same time immediately off the chest and just keep driving through if you want to get this third. And that's exactly how it went down. That was it. There was nothing more than the 205 that he hit, but he grooved it perfectly. He kept his chest high, had great control. He pushed up and back immediately and just drove all the way through it. So that once again put us in a very, very good spot going into deadlifts. Now, originally our plan on deadlifts was we're going to open with 335 kg, which we did. But our options were either going to go to 370 or 365. But just based upon where we were subtotal wise, based upon the fact that Joe only got his opener bench, same thing with Duran's, we knew that there's just no need to even take 370 for the second. Just lock in 365 for the second. So I made sure Ade and Peach know to do that no matter what, and then just see what we need to do to lock in the win by the third, right? So as far as deadlifts were very on. He had 335, smoked, very, very comfortable. We took 365. And once again, smooth, very, very easy. And at this point, it's kind of just watching and seeing how things go. Because at this point, we already know that Duran's and Enna aren't really like a big threat to us. It's more just seeing what Joe does. Joe made a very aggressive jump on his second to 372.5. And I think they actually bumped their opener from, I think it was originally around like 340 to like 345. Even when they did that, we said there's no need for us to change anything. That's them doing that more out of desperation. We're in a good spot. Let's just chill. So we kept our open the same, and then Then Joe jumped 372.5 for a second, didn't get it. So at this point, we already know we're in a good spot. Put it in the placeholder that we needed to, and then once Joe took his retake and missed it, it's like, okay, we can go for whatever we want. So we put in 382.5 just to lock in 900 kg, be the first 83 to hit 900 kg internationally. And it just didn't budge the ground, which we think at this point it's a combo of two things. One is just the fact that, when we hit the 315 kg squat in training, right, we jumped from 295 to 315, whereas this time on squats we hit 305 for the opener, then 312.5 for the second. And then with the deadlift, same thing, hitting like 365 and then going 382.5. We think just because one thing we work on with Ade to start working at is rehabbing his knee, and his knee's a lot better than what it was, but it still can only seem to take so much in one given session before things kind of give a little bit. And we think between just the work that we did the block before with hitting like the 903 training total with like the 315 squat and the 380.5 deadlift, then coming in again, hitting 300 kg plus squats and then having 365 deadlift, we think by then the knee just kind of just couldn't like keep in position rate the force we wanted. And then even though, he was trying to stay locked in, we do think that now in hindsight, there to a degree, it might have been a thing where he's just a little bit more relaxed because the win's already kind of done, right? Even though we still really want the 900. In hindsight, it's good because now we're in a better spot for Sheffield. But yeah, I mean, all in all, Ade had pretty much a perfect day. He executed beautifully. Shout out to Peach for just the great collaboration, like, making the right calls that we need to on the day. Because it was awesome, and we pulled off the upset, if you will, even though people knew it was going to be close. Most people were still banking on Joe, so pulling off the upset and him winning was huge, and allowing him to show what he's really capable of is huge. And now we're going to try to do it again in Sheffield. And the biggest thing we learned with Ade is that what we're doing is working. We just need to continue to do it, continue to make sure we continue to pace him well into Sheffield, and if anything, probably not go quite as hard on the block before the final block. Let us just go a little bit easier to just save more of that juice to push where we need to into that 900 plus threshold at Sheffield itself. So that's the way we're going to be doing things as far as the pacing of Ade. But that's how the day went for him. And honestly, it went incredibly well. It was really, really good. So then the next day, Wednesday, was the 93s. And originally it was going to be a thing where, my client Kwaku with Team Canada, who was in the top 5 93s, it was going to be something where I thought I was going to do something like pretty similar with him that we did with Ade, since I didn't have an actual 93 going. But long story short, it ended up becoming a thing where they wanted me back there with Will Ball for the 93s. And then the main reason, is pretty much that, he has his personal coach, Evan, right? Who, good coach, great game day handler. But I think for the coaching staff, with Evan just being a little bit younger, a little bit less experienced, right? There's that aspect of it, but they want the personal coach there. But then at the same time, they don't want there to be too much friction between Evan and then the official coaches, who might be like, a little bit older, maybe want to be a little bit too conservative with things, right? Comparatively. So they kind of asked me to be back there to kind of help bridge the gap. And I'll say, honestly, I think it worked out really, really well. Obviously, it did, because Will ended up having a perfect day. So I'll very briefly recap this, and then I'll get into my client Kwaku next. But Will just simply won't take that long to go over. So with Will, I think originally the plan that they had laid out, right, as far as him and Evan, was to open with 315 kg, then jump to about 335, and then finish, I think they were saying anywhere like 340 plus, right? Maybe to 350, right? That's what the original plan they had for squat. Will weighed in light. Will always weighs in light, and we know this. But I think him weighing in light kind of freaked out the U.S. coaches a little bit more that were back there, because they just unfortunately aren't as tapped into that thing as they need to be, as far as Will himself and knowing how things are and what to expect, because Will always weighs in light. He weighed a little bit lighter than usual because, once again, same reason that Leanne did with Lithuania, but he still felt fine, because at one point they wanted to pull his over and back from 315 to 300 kg. I made it very clear to them that that's not happening. That doesn't make sense to do. And I said we can have a nice middle ground compromise. So what I ended up telling them was like, hey, let's do this. We know that even though we think if Emil's the greatest threat, right? Like in our minds, and if we think that Christian's right there behind him, it's like, okay, well, we think the most Emil's going to squat on the day on a perfect day would be like 320. So you don't need to be in this 340 plus range to be set up well. And I also told them, keep in mind, you want to win without pushing the world record total too much if you can in terms of Sheffield. So the compromise that I had them all come to was, instead of opening with 315, let's open with 312 and a half. Instead of jumping to 335, let's just, no matter what, jump to 330 for the second, because that already puts you 10 keys above Emil if he has his best squat day. If he has his best squat day, right? And then from there, take what you need from 335 to 340. There's no need to go over 340, think about 345, 350. It's just not needed. Let's just do everything we can to standard. And that went very, very well for the squat. The plan went perfectly. We opened with 312 and a half. Will then went to 330. 330 moved well, but it was a little bit tougher. And all I had them do was I said, hey, man, I think what it is because Will's so muscular and so naturally upright, he looks like he's really well tensioned, but kind of similar thing to Ade, where I said, hey, we're going to lower your rack height by 1. And then what I need you to do is actively squeeze your upper back against the bar, right? And then we went to 335 for the third, and it moved better than the 330 second. So just little quick adjustments there on the day, and we were in a good spot for squat. So we're good to go there. Now with bench, the plan that he and Evan had was already perfect. It was pretty much open with 210, then jump to 215, then finish, 217 to 220. I agree with the plan. I think once again, originally when he weighed in light, the other U.S. coaches kind of we're thinking about like dropping him to like, 205 or something like that for the open. It's like, there's no need. Let's just see how his warm-ups move. And his warm-ups moved great. His last warm-up was 200. He smoked it. So stuck with the plan, and we'll just execute it. 210 moved beautifully. Then with 215, it moved well, but there's like just this little slight clipping of the rack. So just to be safe, Evan and I agreed, just do 217 and a half. That's all you need. He did it. Was good to go there. So there was no issues. Now, as far as the deadlift, this is the one thing where I will say I do think, even though I understand what the mentality is with it, it's one of these things where I think originally for their deadlift opener, they wanted to do, let me see here. They wanted to open with like I think it was like a 360 or so, like for the deadlift opener originally, just to kind of just shut things down the opener, which I get, but it's one of these things where, hey, it's worlds, anything can happen. And with the R gamble that Will already did with already putting world champion in his Bible before the meet even happened, it's like, got to make sure we show up and execute well. And then for me as a handler, I'm just thinking about the fact that like, hey, you know what? It's a lot easier for me to not be emotionally attached because Will's not my direct client, but I also want to see him do well. I want to see Team US do well. So what I told him to do is instead, like, hey, we're definitely going to drop this down, but we're going to wait to drop it down. We're going to wait to see what Emil drops his deadlift opener down to, and then we're just going to open up like 5 kg above that or so, right? Now, here's where it does get funny. This is why it is important to make sure, and this isn't, once again, I'm not trying to be overly critical, not trying to get in trouble or anything like that, but I am going to be honest and be like, this is why it's so important to study not just your lifters that you're handling, but the people that you're going up against, especially if you're in an official like coach or head coach position, right? Because one thing that I told one of the U.S. coaches who was watching the board, said, hey, I want you to watch the board, and whenever they drop a Mill's deadlift opener down, make sure you drop ours to just 5 kg above whatever that is. That way we're dropping Will's opener as well, but we'll still be over whatever a Mill's doing. And originally, I think the Mill had in 350 kg for his opener. And the coach I was talking to was just looking like, well, he opened with like, I think like 342 or something like that last time. So it's just so unreasonable that he's going to open 7.5 higher if he's feeling stronger. And I told him, I said, brother, Emil and Kedrick have not had a real deadlift opener in from the start in the past like 2-3 years. Like since Worlds 2020 onward, it's always a fake deadlift opener. I said, please go watch the board and just wait for when they drop it, so that way you can already put it in. And sure enough, they did. They ended up dropping down to 340, so then we had him open up with 345. And it's a good thing that we did, because one thing I will note is that for Will's last couple of warm-ups, he locked out, but then kind of fell forward a little bit, just because he was, I think, kind of like trying to get his groove with his footing and whatnot. So God forbid if we would have opened up with 360 and that would have happened, that wouldn't have been the best spot to be in, right? So opened up with 345, smoked it, no issues there. And then had him set to take 367.5 on the second, just so he would match the world record total, not boost it at all, put him at 920, and then from there, you're pretty much, it's over, it's done, you've won. You can see what everybody else does, but you're pretty much good to go, right? So he hit 920 on the second, and at that point, the meet's done, right? We know we're good to go. Unfortunately, even though we were well set, and me and Evan agreed he was done, he was set, the other U.S. coach came in and said, like, okay, well, like, what if, and I feel so bad because I can't pronounce his name and I don't want to butcher, so I'm going to say, but the Algerian 93, they said, well, okay, well, what if he bumps his lift, I think they said like 395, then he would technically would have been able to out total Will's 920. But I was like, did y'all watch his second? I said, because currently they had him 390. I said, I don't think he even has 390, let alone 395. It's not there. It's not like, and I'm not talking like it's not like the Ivan situation where it's like, oh, 50 feet. Like, no, it's not there. He's not pulling 390, let alone if he decides to bump to 395 to try to be, well, it's not going to happen, right? But because he said that, I think it kind of really got in Will's head. So just for the sake of Will's peace of mind, Evan and I agreed, okay, let's just put in 375. That just bumps the world record total to 927.5, which Will thinks he'll be good for much more than that by Sheffield. So as long as he's comfortable with that, I made it clear and say, hey, if you do this, you're putting yourself at a slight disadvantage for Sheffield. Will didn't care. He was cool with it. So he put in 375, and he smoked it with room left. So we did that. And funnily enough, the Algerian lift, I think, actually ended up dropping down to, I want to say, like 380 or 380.5, and he missed that. So in hindsight, like I said, Will didn't need that, and Evan and I knew that, but it is what it is. Ultimately, Will did his thing, and that was good to go. Now, going to my client, Kwaku, who also had an absolutely perfect day. Now, once again, the thing is, I'm not allowed to directly handle Kwaku or anything like that. Obviously, we're in the warm room together because Will's there, so I'm able to kind of watch his warm up, see how things are going and stuff like that. But ultimately, Team Canada, headed off by Garrett, was the one who was making the calls. We already had the game plan, we already went over everything, and I trusted them to do what they need to do with Kwaku. I'm just there to kind of give some last minute cues if I see something off, see how everything's feeling. But I mean, they handled it perfectly. So Kwaku, on squats, he opened up with 255 kilos. And in our mind, because Kwaku's main goal was to get a bench medal and a deadlift medal, we just decided there would be no need to push the squat too aggressively. So just to go in for the sure PR, our original range was 280 to 285. But based upon how he was feeling, how his warm-ups were moving, I was like, man, in my mind, just go there and take 280. Even if you feel good for more, just take 280 to save more energy for what you need for bench and deadlift, since those are your main goals. And that's exactly what he did. So he opened up with 255. That moved very, very well. Hit 270 for a clean second. He got one red from the front, but it was good to go, so no issues there. Went up to 280 for a third, dunked it, and got it. Perfect way to start off the day. Nice squat PR for him, and we're chilling. We're good to go there. Then on bench press, he hit 205, was absolutely easy, very, very smoked, 212.5. And then from there, even though there was much room left just to lock in the benchmark that he wanted, he hit 217.5. And he looked like he could have benched 222, 225 on the day. So very happy where strength showed up for the squat. And even though he just matched, I believe that was a PR match for us on bench, it's still one of these things where there was so much room there. So we know he's strong enough for PRing. So that was awesome. And then with deadlift, just kind of played the game to figure out where you need to be placing wise and then deadlift medal wise. And ultimately ended up getting deadlift gold with 377 and a half. And that was also a PR for him. So Kwaku had a perfect day. And there's not too much to say about Kwaku other than the fact that prep went extremely well. It was a quick turnaround from Nat's prep. The main thing that we did was we were honestly just a little bit less aggressive with the squat this prep and did enough to keep the squat feeling good and allowed him to have more room to push the deadlift harder. And that worked out well for us, right? Because we're realizing with Kwaku that he's somebody where if we're getting enough total volume for his squat, then we don't have to have the intensity be anything crazy earlier on. We can 4 weeks out, boost the intensity as needed, and he'll show up and feel strong the way he needs to. So that's what we're going to carry on with his programming, just getting him more acclimated to volume and letting the intensity build up on the squat over time while allowing him to push the bench and deadlift a little bit harder because he can just get away with doing so. So Kwaku had a perfect day. He executed perfectly. He got everything he wanted with the deadlift goal, and I want to say it was bench silver. I want to say that we got bench silver. I think it was bench silver. I'll have to double check that, but got everything he wanted the day, and Team Canada handled him perfectly. So we were in a really, really good spot in regards to that. Now, Thursday, we'll run through this very briefly, was 105s, and I did not, once again, have a U.S. lifter I could be directly handling, but my client, Diego, was going with the 105s from Team Mexico, but I ended up being back there because John Song wanted me back there with him and Anthony McNaughton. And I'll be honest, there, I don't really have much to say about Anthony, just because it's one of these things where it was comfortable. He killed it on squats, right? Bench, they gave him that call on his second bench, so they just took what they needed to for the third bench. They executed perfectly on deadlift, got his world record total back. And really, I don't have as much to say about Anthony because unlike with Will, where I was there more directly helping to make calls, there I was more so just to be of support of whatever Anthony and John needed from me. So it would be disingenuous for me to sit here and act like I played a huge role other than just, being there to support, loading weights, hyping him up, being a second pair of eyes, watching what everybody else was doing so that I could give John confidence in what calls they were making. But I don't have too much to say in regards to that. But as far as my client, Diego, and how things went with him, because I was very proud of Diego because it was one of these things where we didn't exactly have the day that we wanted, but despite that, it just ended up going so well in terms of what we were able to pull together on the day. So for Diego, let me get him pulled up here. All right, so for Diego, our goal was just to come in there, PR the total in place as high as we could, as well as we could, and if possible, try to get into that 900 kg mark, right? So the main thing to note is that originally our plan for Diego's squat was to finish anywhere between 327.5 to 332.5. His squat was moving incredibly well. He was very, very on, and all of his hormones were moving very, very well, right? And Team Canada was keeping him on, not Team Canada, sorry. Team Mexico was keeping everything on point with the standards, the call, everything like that. So he goes out and he takes our opening squat of 290, but he gets called for depth. So due to that and just being a thing, we're like, okay, we're going to go for the second, but we cannot afford to risk anything or play games, so we're going to have him sink it way more. The head coach of Mexico and I decided, hey, just have him take 307.5 for the second. So he took 307.5 for the second, sank it, fought through it, and got it. It was harder, a lot harder than we wanted to be because we're like super sinking. We didn't have him just go a little bit deeper. We said, let's just super sink it just to be safe, just do some of the calls that were being made on the day. So after 307.5, we decided, okay, just go up a little bit to 315, and that was the perfect call at that depth that Diego was hitting. We don't think he had any more, but that was the perfect call and place where we need to be. Then for bench press, Diego, we opened up with 200 kg. The only thing is that they held him there for a long time. Then he had to re-rack it, take it out again, and then still smoked it, which he did. But they had him holding for a long time because his fingers weren't wrapped around the bar enough, apparently, right? Which once again was a little bit annoying with the inconsistencies because compared to where his fingers were, how wrapped they were compared to other people that had gone earlier that week, even some that I had handled, they weren't calling that. So the fact that, once again, inconsistency of what you're getting on the judging was a little bit annoying. But due to how long he had to hold it, just to be safe, we decided to go to 2B, 207.5 kg instead of 210. So with the 207.5, he hits it, he smokes it, but he gets called for elbow tap, which we were not expecting to get called for. But we did notice he elevated his chest up a little bit more on that second. So just to be safe on the third, we just said, okay, we're just going to go 215. We're still going to go up because we knew he was good for strength. We're going to go 215. Don't elevate the chest up quite as much, and then just hit that. And he did with room left in the tank, looking like he was maybe good for 217, 220 on the day. So Diego did his thing there. Then it comes down to deadlift. So for the deadlift, we hit 310 kg for his opener, moved very, very well. Then we hit 337.5 for a second. Once again, moved well. And then our range for the deadlift was 340 to 350. We decided to put in 350 because he looked very, very on. And Diego and I have been working together for about the same amount of time as Ade and I have been, for about like 10 months or so. But one thing he expressed to me is that he's hit that in training, but he's really wanted to be able to hit it on the platform and hit it clean. He's never been able to hit that on the platform. So the other thing too is with hitting that 350, it would allow Diego to PR his total from national. Nationally, he hit like 877, 870, 8.5, something like that, because of the records that he had. So this would allow us to PR our total with 880, despite the big chunk off we lost with having to go easier on the squat. So we put in 350, and then the head coach of Mexico was saying, like, do we want to do 347.5 just to be safe, because that would like also put him like in the best spot, like placing wise, and like number 6 and number 7. But I said, hey, it's like, you're the head coach. It's your call ultimately. But in terms of what I think Diego's good for, I said, I know he's good for. I said, so it's about what he's comfortable with and what y'all decide to do. So I asked Diego, I said, are you good for this? He's like, yes. I'm like, you've got it. He's like, absolutely. I'm like, all right, we have to prove it. Go out there and do it. And when I tell y'all, he smoked this. This 350 moved faster than 337.5. It was crazy. The hype was crazy. The energy was awesome. So very, very proud of him for being able to go in and do his thing and have his day, because he absolutely showed out. So that's how things went on Thursday as far as the men's side. Now, at the same time, because like I said, this time I'm, helping handle Anthony McNaughton, and I'm also able to kind of see how my client Diego's going. But at the same time, my client Annie Nelson from Team GB was also going for the 69 women. And once again, this worked out really, really well, because the same way that Peach was directly handling Ade, he was also directly handling Annie. So I felt very confident with that. And even though I wasn't in the audience to be able to like make direct calls, what I was doing was whenever she would go up for like especially like her second, third attempts, I would go from the warm-up room, as long as John and Anthony were good to go, and go watch her attempts to kind of scream and hype her up and stuff like that from the front row of the audience. So Annie honestly had a really, really solid day. It did not quite finish the way that we wanted it to, but I'll get into that. So for Annie, starting off with squats, our plan was to finish anywhere between 205 and 210, depending on how she's feeling. She has not hit 205 in competition in quite a while, so we knew just being able to do that would be huge. And because of how things were kind of trending with her squat, they trended up further out from the meet, then kind of went down, and then we kind of got things tweaked just in time to have it trend back up again. So we opened up with 180. Well, she opened up with 185 on squat, moved very, very well. Then they jumped to 197.5. Our options for her squat were either going to be a 200 second or 197.5. They went 197.5, 3 white lights on both opener and second, and then they called 205 for the third. And that was the perfect number. She executed beautifully, great control, undeniable depth, and fought for it, and she knocked it out the park. So I was very proud of her and very happy with Peach with making that call, because that went beautifully as far as the squat and put us in a really good spot. Because the thing with Annie is that despite how stacked the class was, when you've got, Janae, Mexican, and so like it's a very stacked class, like across the board. Not just the top 3, but like really it's the top 10. But we came in feeling confident that we could, very well yes, comfortably maybe in top 5, but even swing into that podium depending on how things went, right? So we felt confident with that. So the 205 squat puts us in a really good spot to start off. For bench, she opened up with 117.5 kg. She then hit a PR with 122.5 on her second, and then just didn't quite have enough gas to hit 125 on the third. But hey, we're still in a great spot. Big squat, PB bench, and now we get to play the game on deadlifts, which was the best lift for her this prep during training. So we opened her up with 205 kg. Smoke show, moved better than her last warm-up did. She then went for 220 for the second, and then from here we had a choice to make. Her original range was 230 to 235. We felt like 230, of course, no way she's missing that. That's undeniable, right? But in terms of what we're trying to go for, it's like 232 or 235 would be the better number for setting her up for placing, because it would put her pretty much in top 5, and then depending on who misses, could allow her to be in the top 3. So we felt like the strengthening between Peach, myself, and Annie's boyfriend as well, who was also on Team GB helping to handle. We felt that 232.5 was the number, because we felt like the strength for 235 was there, but 232.5, just 12.5 up from 20, was the number. And unfortunately, she got it so close. She was right there at lockout, but just couldn't quite finish it. And normally with this type of weight, if she gets to that point of lockout, she's got it, as long as she can hold on to it. And her grip didn't give. She held on to it just fine, but just couldn't quite lock it out. And it's like 230 would have also allowed her to PR the total, but 232.5 allows her to PR the total, as well as putting her in the best position placing wise. And obviously, for the team, that is what was valued in that moment. So that's why that was chosen. So it was very frustrating for her, I know, and for myself as well, to like know that, man, we had the strength to be where we wanted to be. Squat was in a great spot. Bench was in a great spot. Just missed 2.5 on that third. And deadlift was the strongest it's ever been. So for it to not go down quite the way we want for the deadlift was definitely tough, but we were still very happy and very proud, because we know what to do to keep everything strong now for her deadlift, her bench, and her squat. We now know with her squat that she's somebody where even when she's in a block where she's finished with singles, we still need to make sure we're keeping in like that higher rep top set work on her primary days earlier in the week, like still hitting like triples and doubles earlier in the block and only hitting the singles on the week 4, which is something that I've been doing with a lot of clients anyway. But we now know for her that's going to be a big thing, because that stimulus she gets from those heavier tops on the primary day just can't be made up for with just back down volume or even like the secondary day. So now that we know that, we think we're going to be able to have her in a much better spot. And our goal is, when by the time they get back to her nationals in December, is to very comfortably be able to PR the total and then keep building momentum up into the worlds following. So that's what we're doing as far as Annie. But once again, still very proud of her, because the best strength has shown up across all 3 in the prep and on the platform. Just wasn't quite where we wanted to be as far as the deadlift, as far as just being able to lock it out. So then Friday, of course, was the 76s. I didn't have anybody going then. I just got to enjoy the awesome battle that was there. And then my last day handling was Saturday, where my client Lucas Wiseman and my client Ashton Rouska both went. Lucas Wiseman, of course, being with Team Canada, and then me directly handling Ashton for Team USA. So I'm actually going to start off first with Lucas, in terms of kind of just going over like how things went with him. And just due to the way the setup was, I think out of all my clients who weren't US, the one who I was able to kind of have the least amount of talk or influence with was Lucas, just because of the way the flight was going and how quick it was, and having to be with Ashton the whole time, and just the mentality I had to kind of keep Ashton, in when he's going. Also like played a role with things. But essentially, as far as how Lucas went, because Lucas had a very strong prep. It was a very quick turnaround. We had 2 blocks together pretty much going into his nationals, and then we had about 3 blocks together going into this world's prep. And we were able to pretty much pace everything very similarly, right? We didn't make too many changes, because you only make so many changes for such a quick turnaround, and it worked well for nationals. We kept things paced very similarly, but he was hitting higher training totals each block relative to Nat's prep for this world's prep. So we're in a really good spot overall. With that being said, as far as how things went, so with squat, he opened up with 330 kilos, and keep in mind the plan for Lucas was to finish anywhere between 375 and 380. He opens up with 330 kilos, gets called for depth. So Garen Team Canada just had him go up 7.5 to 37.5 for a second. He goes in, sinks it deeper, hits it, 3 whites, good to go. Then he goes up to 362.5 for the third, because at this point, obviously, we're not going to jump to that range. It'd just be too big a jump for 362.5 for the third. He hits it, but unfortunately gets called for depth again. And it's one of these things where, as I go back and watch it from the different angles, I feel like, just taking my emotion, I feel like it objectively is depth. But based upon kind of what they were calling on that day, it's like, okay, I can see, like, this is depth, but they're calling other things that are similar depth to this as well. So it's not like I felt like they were picking on Lucas. It's just what the standard was for the day was beyond what I felt like depth was. So that just is what it is. Everyone has to adapt to that on the day. That's just part of the game, right? So ended up just leaving with the second attempt squat. Going into bench, he hit 175 for his opener, but then he got called for glute raise. His butt lifted just a little bit. So they had him retake it for his second, and he got it. Went up to 187.5 for his third, and he got it. So he adjusted and did what he needed to do. Originally, we wanted to finish on bench anywhere between 195 and 200, but obviously when you have to retake the opener on the second, you got to just jump to what you can doing what makes the most sense. So that's what they did. Deadlifts were the tough one. Deadlift was once again a thing where kind of similar to Austin, Nikolai, where I feel like this was kind of just him being robbed. So he opened up with 345 kg, which was still the plan. He then went to 367.5 for a second, and our 2A was 370, our 2B was 365, so they just went right in the middle. And then originally our plan was to finish anywhere between 390 and 395 based on where that can kind of put us placing wise. But due to what happened on the squat and bench, at this point, I know the mentality is like just secure the best total you can, the best placing that you can based on where the strength is at. So they loaded 375. Lucas got it. He gets stuck on the leg just a little bit, but he fights through it to lock out. And he gets it. He gets it. Like they get, like the judges give, I think it was 2-1, 2 whites to 1. But then we're sitting there waiting to see what the jury says, and they end up taking away from him. The biggest thing I think in terms of Lucas is just time. Like I said, we've had pretty much about 5 blocks in total together. We're on our 6th block now. And even though those things worked really well, those 2 blocks going into nationals and work teams going to worlds, just having more time with him. We already know how to get his squat and deadlift stronger, but just having the time to do so in a way that is longer term and healthier. And then with his bench, there's just a lot of work to do with his bench. I think the bench is the biggest thing holding him back. So not only getting him more technically consistent with his bench, but just putting on more upper body mass in general, which it's team craftsmanship. We know how to do that, right? And one thing I told Lucas, right, when the meet was done, like I said, I was very upset and felt very defeated. I told him, I said, feel everything that you need to feel in this moment, because it's valid. You've worked really hard. This is not the result you want. It's not the result you were expecting. It is okay to feel angry, sad, frustrated. Feel all of it, but do not let it define you, and know that this one meet does not define you, because Lucas is still very young. He's got a lot more years in the sport. He's not going anywhere. And when we talked about when we first started working together just 2 blocks before his national meet was that, hey, we don't even know if national's going to go the way we want, which is 2 blocks together, but this is a long-term endeavor for both of us. So I know he's going to come back better than ever. And even now, the way he's training, the standards, like I said, it's this thing where, unfortunately, it's gone beyond hey, train the standard. No, we have to just train beyond the standard. You can't just hit depth. You need to be bottoming out. The deepest you can physically go in your squat, that's what you got to do. Make that your new norm, right? And that's what he's doing. Even the singlet, he uses the full body singlet. Hey, let's get out of that. I think you'll be able to have better, cleaner lockouts with baby powder on your bare leg versus in the full body singlet. So things like that are what we're cleaning up. But just more time with Lucas is going to be what we need. Now, to close off, Ashton Rouska. So as far as Ashton, the goal at this point for us going in was, once again, we felt pretty confident that Rondell was going to, win as long as he did his thing and didn't mess up. If he messed up pretty badly and the door was open for us to try to swing in there and get first, cool. But we already knew, just due to a lot of the external circumstances that Ashton was dealing with, like moving across the country, just 2 weeks out, because he got reassigned to a different division, the 82nd Airborne Division, which is a very active division of the U.S. military, due to all the physical testing that he's having to do, before moving and then after moving, and just due to all the different life streams that Ashton deals with. Even though we were objectively kind of stronger in this prep compared to NAS prep, the recovery was so much worse. So much worse. To the point where even the way we approached the final block was different. Every block before the final block of Worlds prep, we paced everything to be higher than NAS prep. But for that final block, we pulled everything back quite a bit. Because we're the whole purpose of building into the meet is you're keeping your fitness where you need to be, you're outpacing your fatigue, and if you pull back too much for no reason, yeah, your fatigue drops, but then your fitness drops too. But in this case, our fitness is already where it needs to be, but we're way over fatigued than what we needed to be. So we just pulled them back a lot that last block to kind of get the fatigue down, and it kind of worked out well in our favor, right? But going into it, our main goal was to lock in 2nd place and try to get high enough over the 95% of the world record total to set ourselves up for a Sheffield spot, especially since all the other male weight classes that could kind of beat us out for that were done. We already knew there wouldn't be a super heavyweight that was probably going to be able to manage that, since even Jesus has to have a really good day just to hit the 95%, and we figured whoever got second to him wasn't even going to be there. So if we hit the actual world record total or above, we think we're good to go, which we felt set for. But going into it with squats, we opened up with 362.5. Our plan was to kind of do something very similar to what we did for our nationals, but just pace ourselves a little bit higher on the opener and the second to try to be set to finish higher at the third. Our range for Ashton's squat specifically was 400.5 kg, so matching what we hit at nationals, as high as 408.5 kg, 900 pounds exactly, right? That's what we were kind of looking to do. So 362.5 moved really, really well. He looked good, but once again, We know we're a little more beat up coming into this. We also know that we weighed in lighter by about like 2 kilos compared to nationals. But with that being said, we still felt like we were in a good spot. So we went to the planned second of 388, and it was tough. It moved well, but it was definitely tough. So I decided just to play it safe, go up 5 keys to 393. I think one of the other U.S. coaches thought he made me be good for like, 395. But out of all the lifters that I handled this week, Ashton's the one I'm working with the longest. I know Ashton. I know his body. I know what he can kind of handle. So we went with 393, hyped him up, said everything I needed to say to him in that moment to get him ready to go out there and take that weight. And he got it, man. And it was the number, right? Like, it's one of those things where you give us an extra week of recovery, right? Or you give us like half a kilo of body weight, and maybe there's more there. But based upon the circumstances of things going on right then and there, 393 was the number, and it puts us in a really, really good spot. So it was really cool just to note that Ashton, broke the world record 4 times, technically unofficially, right? Like 4 times, because he did it at Nationals, unofficially on his second, and then did it on his third, and then did it officially here on the world stage on his second and then on his third. So even though, we were about 7.5 keys lower than where we were at Nationals, still puts us in a really, really good spot. Going into the bench press, as y'all know, Ashton's still dealing with the pec thing. It's the healthiest it's ever been. It's getting healthier. It's continuing getting healthier, and we're continuing to get stronger. But now it's just this balance of, as it's continuing to heal, doing enough work to get the bench stronger, but not so much to where it pushes the pec back recovery-wise, right? So one thing that we actually incorporated with Ashton the last 2 weeks was a 4th bench day, but it was a very light day, just a little light 3x3 to help him get in better groove with practicing the movement, and that actually worked really well and something we plan to keep going forward. But with that being said, originally we were going to open up with 190 kg, but we just wanted to be safe, make sure the pec was good, so we lowered his opener to 187.5. We then jumped to 195 kg, and it moved well. It moved so well where Ashton got excited. Like I don't know if there's any way you can hear on the audio, but like from where I was, you could hear him be like, yeah, when he hit the second. Like, I haven't heard him that excited on the bench press since the pec tear. So we knew it was in a good spot, but just due to, once again, knowing how that pec gets around like that 200 kg mark, it's like, let's just stay in the game, be smart. Let's hit 200 kg, even though I thought I might be good for 202.5. And 200 kg was the number. Funnily enough, this time it wasn't so much just the pec that kind of inhibited him. He clipped the rack a little bit coming up, and that's what made the 200 kg harder. But he actually felt strong on the bench relative to how he felt in nationals. So bench actually showed a better strength-wise, but we just took 200 kg just to be smart and continue to go with things for the day. Deadlift is unfortunately where things started to get really, really rough, because his warm-ups were moving well, but he could feel that his back was kind of like there a little bit. But it was still moving really, really well. So we're like, hey, we're just going to still stick with what the plan is as far as the opener, because we know we need to be around there to at least hit the 95%. So we actually bumped his opener by 2.5 just to ensure that we would hit the 95% of the world record total on the opener, and then kind of just go from there. So we hit 342.5 for the opener, but it was tough. It was definitely tougher than what we were expecting it to be. But we also know with the jumps we made from the last one to openers that Ash tends to acclimate as we go. So originally our second attempt range for the deadlift was going to be 367.5 to 372, but because of how tough the 342.5 was relatively, we just jumped 20 to 362.5, and he's getting off the floor, and then boom, his back pops and just gives, and you can't muster it up. So at that point, our only number that makes sense is to go up 5 kg, 37.5. So that way, if we hit that number, we force everybody else that'll pull after him to have to make sure they're hitting their lifts, because if they don't, then Ashton can still finish where he needs to as far as potential second place, right? But we knew that we couldn't do a conventional. So as we've done before, we switched to sumo for his third for 367.5, and he almost got it. It was so close. It was right there. But unfortunately, just didn't quite have the juice to finish it out. And in hindsight, if we could have done sumo from the jump, or even just switched right there on that day, he probably would have been good for it, because that was obviously the first one we've taken in a long time. But a big part of that was just due to the recovery stuff that was going on. Sumo was actually causing more issues for us than conventional was in training, right? So that's why we stuck with conventional. But now that we kind of have things a little bit more calm, he's a little bit more established where he's going to be base-wise now, we definitely plan to go back to sumo, and we know how to train it and pace it. Because the biggest thing with the conventional is that we only can, when we're using it, we're only hitting it every other week. So he's only pulling conventional twice a block, essentially. Whereas with sumo, we can do it weekly and just accumulate more workload. And now that his body's in a position where, like, okay, it's healthy enough in the hips and not irritating the back the way it was, where we can do it consistently, we know that's going to be the thing to do going forward. So the next meet for Ashton will be, most likely advances Houston, unless we get that Sheffield wildcard spot, which would be awesome. But the good news is we know what we're doing is working. And like I said, with Ashton, to be able to have consistency of just doing the same thing programming-wise instead of having to change it every prep, to be able to do what we did for SPD Austin, then do something very similar to National, then very similar for Worlds Prep, and just having to tweak things here and there, puts us in a really, really good spot. So the biggest thing with Ashton that I learned, honestly, had a little bit less to do with the game day and more just like things we can do with him programming-wise going forward. But what I will say is, once again, just making the right calls on the day and not getting too greedy, right? And just knowing your lifter and just trusting your gut and being objective with what you're doing. And I feel like that only continued to get better throughout the whole week. So yeah, that was it for the team. Let's make sure. So Leanne, Austin, Ade, Annie, Diego, Ashton, Lucas, and then Kwaku. So yeah, that was all 8 of them. Then, like I said, a little brief recap about handling Will Ball, and then I had too much to say about Anthony. Him and John did their thing, but that is how the week went for me. And like I said, as a whole, if I'm being honest, like I said, the biggest thing I was being myself about was like the call with Leanne, her third bench specifically, right? The rest kind of just played out the way it did. Wasn't mad with any of the calls I really made with Austin. Wasn't really mad with any of the calls I made throughout the rest of the week. But the biggest thing for me that I got out of the whole experience was just the importance of remembering, like, okay, yes, it's Worlds. Yes, there's pressure. Yes, there's in these battles. But as I know and I've preached this, but the same mentality that I have at a local meet, a regional meet, or national meet, the same mentality I have of how I'm making attempts, how I'm picking numbers, about focusing on what's right in front of you and not what may happen and not doing things based off what ifs, just keeping that same mentality. And not letting even things suddenly drastically shift, right? Like one lift didn't go the way you wanted. It doesn't mean you try to make up for it on the next lift. It just means you take each lift one at a time and make the best call right then and there. So yeah, I just wanted to take the time to break that down for you guys and kind of take you guys through everything and how everybody did. Like I said, with Ashton, I'm very proud of the fact that we still finished top 5 despite the crazy circumstances that he had. And we know there's more there, right? Whether he continues on as a 120 or if due to his military service has to go back down to 105. The next time Ashton's on the platform, we know that he's going to be in a really, really good spot. And I'm proud of my team as a whole because one of the coolest things that's happened is all 8 of them, regardless of how well they did or didn't do, they're on fire. They're so hungry. They're on a whole new level of locked in with everything they're doing to try to get back there and be even better and beat what they did this year. And all of my clients who watch them, their teammates, are all on fire and hyped up. And me as their coach, and also still compared to myself, I'm on fire and I'm hyped up. It's just different. Like watching Worlds every year is awesome, but it's different when it's like, when it's your clients and your friends doing it. And it was just such a blessing and privilege and honor to have 8 clients from 4 different nations as far as US, Canada, GB, and Mexico representing there. And I don't take it for granted, and I don't take the experience for granted. And it was an amazing week. So yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on how the week went. Like I said, it's a longer video, but hopefully you guys got something out of this, right? And now you just have a little bit more context to what was going on, the why behind everything and whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go leave a comment down below. Let me know what you did. If you're not, leave a comment down below. Let me know what can be better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch you guys later.